Back when I worked in an office, this guy would take credit for everyone's projects and meetings, then blame his team when things went wrong. He'd walk into presentations with slides created by interns, present them as his own research, and when the boss asked questions, he'd suddenly claim the intern must have made an error. Within 2 years, half the department had transferred out just to escape his narcissism. He still doesn't understand why he's never been promoted. My former workplace had this woman who would arrive at 10 a.m. daily, leave by 3 p.m., take 3-hour lunches, yet somehow had the audacity to complain about others, not pulling their weight. She'd send emails about productivity while doing absolutely nothing herself, CCing management to make it seem like she was doing oversight. When her lack of actual work became obvious, she claimed everyone was sabotaging her schedule and demanded working from home permanently. Sitting next to someone for 3 years who would eat incredibly pungent food at their desk, fermented fish, durian, garlic-heavy meals, then get offended when coworkers mentioned the smell. She'd say, "I can't help my cultural diet," as if we were attacking her background rather than just the overwhelming odor filling a shared workspace. She refused to eat in the break room and accused anyone who complained of being intolerant. There's this coworker who insisted on having meetings about meetings, then meetings to discuss what was decided in the previous meeting about meetings. She'd create 40-slide PowerPoints for 5-minute updates and schedule 2-hour discussions for things that needed 30 seconds of explanation. Everyone dreaded her calendar invites. When management suggested streamlining communication, she filed a complaint claiming they were minimizing her contributions through meeting suppression. One colleague used to set his alarm to go off multiple times throughout the day, then act surprised each time it rang. For months, our entire department had to endure loud alarms at random intervals because he refused to change his notification settings. When people finally complained, he claimed he needed them for memory and accused the team of being unsupportive of his organizational methods. This person in accounting would photocopy everything, literally everything, and then lose the copies immediately. She'd print out emails, scan documents that were already digital, and create physical backups of cloud-stored files. Her desk was buried in paper, her filing system made zero sense, yet she'd frequently ask to borrow important documents because she'd misplaced her copies. Management had to enforce a paperless policy specifically because of her. Someone working in my department once complained that the office temperature was too comfortable, which apparently made her want to work less. She demanded the thermostat be kept at uncomfortable levels to motivate productivity. When this suggestion was obviously rejected, she bought a portable space heater and positioned it to blow uncomfortable hot air across the shared cubicle wall, then complained when others adjusted it. She saw this as coworkers being saboteurs. My coworker spent 8 months designing a project, presented it to leadership, and then a guy from another team completely plagiarized the entire concept and presented it as his own innovation. When called out, he claimed ideas aren't proprietary and that my coworker shouldn't have discussed it in shared spaces. He actually got credit because he presented to higher-ups first. He now acts like the original creator is jealous of his successful project. There was this woman who would volunteer for every task, commit to impossible deadlines, then miss them all while blaming circumstances beyond her control. She'd offer to help colleagues with their work, disrupt their actual projects, produce nothing of value, then expect gratitude for trying. When people stopped accepting her help, she complained that the team was not collaborative and sent group emails about how underappreciated she was. Witnessing this firsthand, a coworker decided the office needed his personal business as the centerpiece of workplace discussion. He'd spend hours telling everyone about his MLM startup, showing products nobody asked for, trying to recruit coworkers during work hours. When people weren't interested, he accused them of not supporting entrepreneurship and claimed the company was stifling innovation by wanting him to actually do his job. Back at my previous company, someone literally rewrote other people's work to add their own name as a secondary contributor, then acted offended when removed. They'd copy-paste colleagues' emails into presentations, modify one sentence, and take partial credit. When confronted, they claimed they were building on ideas and that the original authors were gatekeeping knowledge. Nobody wanted to share documents with them anymore. Dealing with a coworker who would ask the same question in multiple ways until someone gave her the answer she wanted, then use that single confirmation as consensus. She'd ask, "Is this project due Friday?" and get told, "Probably not, it looks like next week." She'd then ask, "Could it possibly be Friday?" And when someone said, "Sure, technically Friday is possible," she'd announce to the team that everyone agreed on Friday deadlines. Chaos ensued regularly. This guy in my office would print out emails and physically hand them to people instead of using email, claiming digital communication was impersonal. He'd print entire email chains and hand-deliver them to people's desks. When it made a new printer policy, he bought his own printer and installed it under his desk. When asked to remove it, he claimed the company was anti-productivity and wanted him to work less. He genuinely didn't understand that email already exists. Someone I worked with had this bizarre habit of correcting people's grammar constantly in meetings, even when it was completely irrelevant to the discussion. Someone would say, "We need to maximize our ROI," and she'd interject, "It's return on investment, not ROI that needs explaining." She'd derail entire presentations to fix minor phrasing issues. When told her corrections were disruptive, she claimed people were anti-education and accused them of hatting learning. My former workplace had a coworker who would steal lunches from the office fridge constantly, then deny it aggressively. Everyone knew it was her because she'd eat food from other people's containers in front of them, finish it, wash the container, and return it. When confronted, she'd claim someone else must have done it, or that food left in a shared space was communal property. She was shocked when people started bringing food from home instead. There's someone who attended every single team meeting, but never participated, then sent individual emails to the boss complaining that they weren't being heard. They'd ask for the same information that was discussed in the meeting they attended, then claimed nobody kept them in the loop. When told the information was shared in the meeting they showed up for, they accused the team of excluding them despite their physical presence. This coworker would create elaborate spreadsheets tracking every 5 minutes other people spent on breaks, then send reports to management claiming certain team members weren't working hard enough. Her spreadsheet was completely inaccurate because she'd just observe randomly and extrapolate, but she'd present it as evidence of laziness. She somehow thought this made her look productive instead of obsessive and weird. Watching this unfold, a coworker decided to respond to every team email with "per my last email," even when this was literally the first email about the topic. She'd start an email chain with this phrase, as if referencing a previous message that didn't exist. When people pointed out the logic issue, she claimed she was establishing communication efficiency standards, and everyone else was resistant to improvement. One colleague would claim credit for mistakes just to seem busy, saying things like, "I made an error on the Johnson account. It was a learning experience." When management discovered the mistake was actually made by an intern, the coworker said she was taking responsibility for team supervision. She never actually supervised anyone. She just wanted to seem important through false accountability. Someone in my department would send rambling 17-paragraph emails for something that could be communicated in one sentence. A simple, "The meeting is at 2 p.m." would turn into essays about how 2 p.m. was chosen, why this time made sense historically, personal anecdotes about punctuality, and CCing unnecessary people. Nobody wanted to open her emails anymore because everyone knew it would waste 20 minutes deciphering her point. There's a coworker who would attend meetings specifically to object to everything, then send follow-up emails supporting the same decisions. In one meeting, she'd argue against a new software system, then email the team saying she was excited about the new system and grateful for her input in the decision-making process. She seemed to think contradicting herself made her seem thoughtful rather than unreliable. This person would constantly ask to borrow money for lunch, snacks, or random things, accumulating debts they never repaid. When colleagues stopped lending money, they complained that the workplace was financially oppressive and that refusing loans was classist. They never seemed to understand that borrowing money repeatedly with no repayment is basically theft with extra steps. My former coworker made a habit of explaining basic concepts to senior staff members as if they invented the ideas themselves. Someone with 20 years of experience would make a comment, and this coworker would say, "Oh, that's actually how productivity works," and then explain productivity like the senior person didn't already understand it. They seemed oblivious to how condescending this was. Observing this situation, a coworker created an elaborate system of post-it notes covering her entire cubicle with reminders about things everyone already knew. Remember to save documents, check your email, meetings start on time. When asked why she needed these reminders, she said she had a brilliant system. The notes were constantly falling off, stuck to people's clothes, and created a fire hazard. Management had to ask her to remove them. This colleague would attend training sessions, then immediately claim the information was stuff I already knew, while clearly struggling with the basic concepts. He'd act offended that time was being spent on things he obviously understood, then ask basic questions about the exact same material later. His ego wouldn't allow him to actually learn anything because admitting ignorance felt like failure. There's someone who would send urgent messages about non-urgent things, marking everything as high priority to the point where nothing felt urgent anymore. A typo in a document would be marked urgent, immediate attention required. By the time an actual urgent issue arose, everyone had learned to ignore their messages. When the boss addressed this, they claimed everyone else had lost sensitivity to important matters. My coworker invented a completely unnecessary meeting every single Friday called productivity reflection sessions, where she'd make everyone discuss what they'd accomplished. It always ran long, always seemed accusatory, and everyone resented it. When people suggested canceling it, she claimed they were afraid of accountability and sent passive-aggressive emails about how apparently productivity discussions are too challenging for this team. Working near someone who would give unsolicited advice about everything: your clothing, your work style, your lunch choices, your parking spot selection, then get offended when you didn't implement her suggestions. She'd say, "I was just trying to help," whenever you'd politely decline her constant critiques. She somehow didn't realize that constant, unsolicited advice feels like constant criticism. This person in my office would agree to help with projects then completely ghost once assigned work. They'd volunteer enthusiastically in meetings, disappear from follow-ups, and then deny ever agreeing to anything. When deadlines were missed because they didn't contribute, they'd claim miscommunication or that the project was poorly organized. Pattern repeated constantly with no consequences.